Welcome to a true spiritual adventure story like the world has never known, with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon. This is Dr. James Weldon Yogadhi, speaking to you from Heavenly Mountain, our wonderful community here in Boone, North Carolina, the home of the Art of Living Retreat Center, and a wonderful community dedicated to living higher life, enlightened lives. Come join us. This is from my book, Living the Enlightened Life, Chapter 5. Chapter 5, I Discover Religion. And here's the poem at the beginning of that chapter. Those that say they know the purpose of life, they do not know the purpose of life. Those that know the purpose of life, they will not say the purpose of life. If someone comes and says they know, run away, for the truth of life is more than any words can convey. In a small community church run completely by young adults, I find religion. The church is so small that it only seats 30 people, and the pastor is only 18 years old. This is fine with me. After the last few years, I'm through trusting adults. I'm 15 years old and in the 10th grade, and we now have all the answers. We meet twice a week to sing and pray our hearts out, and I throw myself into prayer like a marathon runner fleeing a tiger. I quickly discover that I'm pretty good at this. I know how to pray, and I'm really desperate. To find a group of people my age willing to approach God as a living being, for me, is a revelation. We cry together, we have found it. We have found it. We have truly found it. True belief and acceptance of Jesus is the way. I'm so relieved. Now I don't have to look anymore. I had accepted Jesus before, but that was not good enough. Now I really accepted him and set about the task of studying the Bible intensely and praying to him all the time. As I give myself to Christ completely, something really happens. A new power comes into my life. And together in that small church, we pray not only for minutes, we spend hours all evening on our knees crying to God. I feel liberated, without inhibition, to reveal for the first time, even to myself, how much I want God. There's nothing to hold back. I yell, scream, and sob to God over and over again with everyone until we're hysterical with emotion. A definite experience comes during those prayers. I feel vented of emotion and quiet for a while, but the feeling of utter aloneness and desperation returns. One evening I stop praying as others continue, and a deep feeling of peace comes over me. This is it, I think, and I close my eyes and let go. The longing for God is all I experience, and I feel freedom. I reach out for Jesus in the same way that I grasped from my father after his passing. A boundary breaks, and I touch Jesus in the same way that I traveled to the beach in my mind years earlier. I soar up and away from that small church as everything disappears but my longing for God. A light like moonbeams fills my awareness. Everything is gone. Everything dissolves. My mind cries, it's Jesus. I see, I feel, I know. It must be Jesus. Gradually, the elevated feeling and presence fades away, and the room, my friends, praying returns. On returning, I'm amazed that hours have passed unnoticed. I see in that instance that longing for God can be wonderful. Somehow it brings me into the presence of something wonderful. Is this true, I wonder? Am I going crazy? Did I really feel God? Why doesn't this experience come all the time? And I leave that church feeling happy, but frustrated, wanting more. The next evening is even more intense. We start a long prayer session. As things become more hysterical, we begin to babble. I talk in a Chinese-like language, and others talk in other languages, Oh lao, oh lao, I cry in Chinese. I think it's Chinese. I feel as if I'm speaking in a foreign language. And I know that I'm saying, oh God, with absolute clarity. The intensity increases. My body begins to shake. Tingling energy runs throughout my body and out into the room. Oh God, why have you forsaken us? Why have you left us alone in this hell so far from truth? Where is your messenger? Where is your guidance? Where is your light? Oh God, save us. With my cry, it is like my voice and calling becomes the deepest desire of everyone in the room. The room is like a zoo. People are crying and screaming, writhing about and rolling on the floor uncontrollably. I continue to call out to God in Chinese. But in the midst of the madness, my awareness recedes to a great distance, as if I'm only a spectator watching a performance. The teenage friend next to me is talking in another language. I hear his words, understanding, but answering in another language. Save my mother and father, save us all, he cries. The whole church becomes united in a call for God this way. A torment of emotions like a fire for God fills the room. 2 hours pass as our desperate cry to God ends, and we look at each other in astonishment. What happened here? We wonder. Filled with enthusiasm at having touched something unique, I decide I will leave high school and spread the gospel full time. When I arrive home, I share my experience and my plans to teach Christianity with my mother. Mom is shocked. Over the next 2 days, as I talk to her, things look different. What happened in that church? I don't know. Did we go crazy? Was it real? It couldn't have been real. I can't just quit school and go running around with a Bible in my hand, quoting the scripture. I did touch something fantastic and amazing, but it also made me feel afraid afterwards. I can't go back to that church and risk that happening again. I decide to take my experiences private. No one will know or be hurt if I keep it to myself. I'll never talk about it, but I will feel God only when I'm alone at night. Perhaps the feeling of Jesus will come again. I don't ask for things. I long for God. Where are you? Where are you? Come to me, I say. Something in that quiet calling answers. Go on and keep searching. I will come, and in time you will find me. Like a desperate man driven by a storm, looking for shelter, I come into Christianity, and I jump in. Because I'm lost, the sanctuary looks attractive. I meet friends who say they are saved. I believe their words because I want to be happy and free from suffering too. In that small church, I experienced the pinnacle of Christian faith, the kingdom of heaven and the presence of Christ that I learned about from the Bible. Yet I'm left alone, longing for more. After that experience, I'm happier, but only for short periods of time. Intuitively, I know there is much, much more to it. My experiences of God as a child show me a larger spiritual universe about me. Nobody I meet in my life knows how to open that door to that greater dimension and sustain that experience permanently. I decide it's safer to put religion aside, to hide my seeking in a place that no one can find unless I choose to show them. I learned much later that there's a fundamental difference between the spiritual traditions of the Middle East and the Far East. Islam and Christianity place primary emphasis upon belief, are essentially afraid of a spiritual experience, especially if it falls outside of what is accepted by their tradition. They say, believe and you are saved. Experience of the divine doesn't matter. Even within Christianity, there's a distrust of other denominations and the experiences that may come there. In general, the independent, evangelical, and charismatic churches stand on one side and are open to spiritual experience. The established, perhaps Protestant and Catholic, stand on the other side and are skeptical about spiritual experience. The possibility, as Christ said, to be perfect is as I am perfect, following his path and become one with the Father, that is, in the heaven within us, is not addressed. The Far Eastern traditions, including Buddhism and Hinduism and others, place their emphasis first upon spiritual experience. Essentially, they are saying, experience the divine, then believe. They offer many specific methods of doing that, one of which I discovered later was yoga. This dichotomy followed me all of my life. Just to be told the truth by somebody, for me, was not enough. I accepted that truth, but I was not satisfied. Even when I completely believed in Christianity, belief without deep spiritual experience leads to fanaticism. Even at this point, I appreciated the community of the church and the experiences that came there, but I was scared away by the rejection of anything different. This is really a strange view when you think about it. We feel no qualms about eating Chinese, Indian, Italian food, etc. When someone makes a scientific discovery from Tibet, for example, we don't become Buddhists by taking advantage of that knowledge. However, when it comes to the spiritual wisdom of other cultures, many are afraid to take advantage of those discoveries, even though those discoveries may significantly improve their life. That small church in my hometown, where I spoke in tongues, becomes a symbol of something needed but not found in my life. Every day for years, I pass it, coming home from school, and wonder about what happened there. Let the visions go away, I decide, but still they will not leave me alone. This is my initiation into high school. I know nothing about spirituality, and what little I learned growing up only made me more desperate. The enlightened consciousness, living the enlightened life that I now know was living within me, continued to be in an education which I did not find. This is my initiation into high school. I know nothing about spirituality, and what little I learned growing up only made me more desperate. The enlightened life hidden within me continued its inner education anyway, as more strange things continue to happen to me. I try to fit in, to be like everyone else, but I fail. The more I try to fit in, the more unhappier I become. Outwardly, I act as though I'm happy, but I can't even convince myself. I put on a smiling face every day, but I don't feel it. I have become like those around me, and I'm only 17 years old. Isn't there more to life than this, I wonder? So ends chapter 5. Few adults realize that in many of the children, there's a desperate seeking going on within them. I know that was the case in my experience. With the flashbacks I was having, perhaps of other lives, scenes that I was seeing perhaps before they happened, the inner part of my being was driving me towards a greater understanding. At this point, it wouldn't end. So come back for the next chapter of my drama, of my quiet seeking of finding the enlightened life. And there's more. And the next chapter is entitled Lost in a Sea of Suffering. So join us again. And my only wish is that all of this that I pass through should be less for everyone else. This is my prayer. That the terrible distress and longing that I experienced as a child, and the terrible feelings that I experienced as a child of others passing away and not understanding, and feeling and sensing a greater life that I was not able to fully come into, that these discussions will be a way of lessening that for many, that they might discover the limitless joy that is our being, inner being. And my only wish is for that to be lived in every life in this world. So my prayer is that the enlightened life will awaken in every one of you. Namaste. We'll see you again. Thanks for joining us in our YouTube channel, books, podcast episodes on living the enlightened life, and autobiography with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon.